And so it's, in my viewpoint, honestly, guys like me can't leave soon enough for this hobby.
That right there was Kyle Brink, executive producer at Dungeons & Dragons, owned of course by Hasbro, explaining that in his view, white, straight men cannot leave the business soon enough. He even presages this by saying that people like him can't leave the workforce soon enough, and that they are currently being replaced by, well, essentially diversity hires, as they also mentioned that a great deal as well. This is taken from a podcast that is primarily intended to talk about the open gaming license disaster, and he certainly does address that as well, mostly via completely and utterly undiluted bullshit. Straight up. Like the idea that the version that was leaked was just a draft, you see. It was just a draft, it wasn't meant to be taken seriously, even though he also says that it had been in the works for years, even before he arrived at the company, so there you go. And they were totally making all kinds of changes to fix it and make it less awful, you see. They were absolutely intending to speak to the community. It's just that by community they meant, well, the million-plus subscriber YouTube channels and the people who were already earning stacks of cash off this. You know, the people they already had entered into NDAs and various contracts with to make sure that they kept their dirty, filthy mouths shut, of course. There's also the usual bullshit that the entire idea about license fees, etc., was only intended to be against the really big creators. You see, the huge companies, they weren't intending to crush independent content creators, of course not. They were worried about Disney and Facebook and Meta and shit like that. Ah yes, Disney, the sub-$1 million a year company. No, obviously not. This was never targeted against Disney. It would have been an incidental hit, if anything. Not to mention, if Disney wanted to roll over you, they probably would. This was intended to crush small competition. It was intended to crush Paizo. It was intended to crush the people who might want to try and create some sort of a D&D derivative of their own, which many companies did using the old open gaming license. There's a lot of BS in this whole interview, and to be clear as well, this is two progressives interviewing a third progressive, and so they are all for diversity hires and forced inclusion, etc. yada yada. And the only real question is, are you giving enough power to the people with the correct skin color? And yes, they apparently are. And one of the interesting parts about this interview, setting aside the person's obvious and blatant racism against people that are white, because, you know, is that a company policy at D&D? Yes. Yes, of course it is. Obviously it is. It's a Hasbro policy. God damn it. The entire concept of diversity hires based on skin color is a racist idea. It shouldn't shock anyone at this point, frankly. But what was more interesting is that apparently they have hired at least 2 diversity commissars to read over every single bit of writing that they currently produce, and sometimes 3 diversity commissars, you know, just in case they can't spot the racism the first 2 times around, I guess. And they're also using these guys to look over the old lore as well, to sanitize it and burn those damn filthy, dirty books, because it might offend somebody, you know, 30-odd plus years later, who knows. There was also an interesting little mention. So, obviously, these 2 guys are in reality all for the introduction of various rules and standards against hateful content. Obviously so, because, well, again, it's 2 progressives interviewing a third, duh. But they were worried, what if conservatism comes back into power? What if conservatives take over Dungeons & Dragons and start calling the things we like hateful? Well, what then? Do you have any safeguards against that? And, well, no, he doesn't. I do like, at least, that they can recognize the fact that what they're doing is not a very good thing, and if it was used against them, they would really hate it, but that's about as far as it goes, I suppose. The whole thing. So, let's kind of double back a little bit to the whole people like me should be leaving D&D as quickly as possible. Well, Kyle, After you, good sir. I would like it if you would hand in your resignation immediately, quit your job, and go do something else. I don't care what. Something that doesn't inconvenience anybody that is clearly better than you, right? Just pack up your bag, leave the company, and never return to Dungeons & Dragons or any form of geekdom or fandom or fantasy or PC games or anything. God help me if you start entering 40k. Just please, just do us, and you know what? This'll do us all a favor. It'll help Dungeons & Dragons, it'll allow for a nice diversity hire to take your place, and it'll prevent, well, abject, blatant racists like yourself from ruining anybody else's experience as well. Everybody wins. It's a fantastic idea, frankly. And obviously, again, this has also influenced the company's hiring procedures. I mentioned the two diversity commissars that read anything and everything they write now. Amusingly, they do ask the question as to whether or not there are any other people in actual positions of real power that were, diverse, and the lack of diversity within the company in positions of authority, and Kyle doesn't really have a good answer to that, in that, well, they've got some people writing books, like the one Dungeons & Dragons adventure, for example, that was marketed as not actually an adventure at all, but a quest hub, sort of. It didn't actually have any quests, but you could totally use it as kind of a quest hub. That was marketed as written by a purely ethnic team. Ah, fantastic. And also, it's a very peaceful adventure without any combat or violence or any silly things like that. Good. Sounds riveting, frankly. Absolutely riveting. And will this affect the company overall? Well, yes, it already has. All of the diversity in the world clearly didn't stop the open gaming license. Even though it had been in the works for years. He does mention that there were some dissenting voices, but clearly they were all ignored. But now they'll totally be listened to the next time around. Yeah, sure. Why not? Well, we didn't do it that time, but we've totally learned our lesson now, haven't we? We'll see about it. He does also mention a couple of things that are sort of, sort of nice in terms of Dungeons & Dragons' overall future, in that they have no plans at the moment to move everything online to a purely digital form of D&D, which is nice. I don't know whether or not you can believe him, because of course he adds in the little weasel word at the end there that, oh no, they're doing this just for the community, you see. You can play Dungeons & Dragons without ever buying any Dungeons & Dragons stuff, apparently. I am not entirely sure how you're going to do that without the rulebooks, etc., but, that's an option. You can use the old ones, I suppose. And that they are going to just provide options for people. And if one of those options happen to be an online platform, and they happen to see that all of their sales and attention is going towards that online platform because of, I don't know, they stopped supporting everything else, well then, you know what, that's an organic decision. That's a decision made by the community, you see. Oh. Indeed, it's a community decision. They've also mentioned that they're going to try and listen to the community more, which, again, bearing in mind what a diverse company this is, we know what kind of community they're going to be listening to, obviously. And as for this, the entire D&D situation, right? This is damage control of the purest, sheerest form. He is giving out interviews now to anyone who will listen to try and make sure that the company looks good, that it's talking to people, and it's totally taking the feedback on board and making all of the mewling, appeasing mouth sounds possible, including the more aggressive ones like, yeah, maybe white people just shouldn't exist in the tabletop gaming industry because, well, he doesn't feel like he belongs there anymore, and that he's being pushed out of the workspace. I don't know if that's a good thing, but again, I'm not an enormous racist, so I wouldn't know. I don't have the point of view required for that kind of high-level analysis, as you can quite clearly tell. Oh, Jesus. Hell, the thing is, too, probably for the D&D community, I did see this being posted on the D&D Reddit. I did see a censored version of it, which the entire thread had simply been locked. That was the one that mentioned the part about, people like me should leave the hobby as quickly as possible. That had been yeeted off the website. There were several other posts as well that were basically lauding it and didn't really seem to mind, but bear in mind, That's Reddit. That is in all due likelihood the community that they are referring to when they are saying in the interview that they want to try and give more power to the community and listen more closely to the community. I feel like I've heard this excuse before when companies make a big mistake, but, oh well. Dungeons & Dragons is in the decline, in my opinion, straight up. And things like this, well, it's going to help your PR with the already fairly small group of people who only play your game because it gives them clout to do so in all due likelihood. And as for everybody else, they're probably only going to get more and more turned on by what is in all due likelihood simply another layer of bullshit and lies on top of already a rather sizable BS sandwich. And when you throw in a little bit of, I don't think white people should be in the hobby anymore, and of course the old thing too, it was never true. It was always a falsehood. That Dungeons & Dragons were played primarily by men in their basements. That was never true about Dungeons & Dragons, was it? Oh, yes. Just like video gaming was never a primarily male hobby. Of course not. It was always very diverse, you see. It would be nice to hear an interview where one of these people just simply says something along the lines of, I don't care who plays it. And if we were just going to make a product here, and if somebody wants to pick it up, great. And if not, also great. It's really up to the customer rather than us to decide what you do in your spare time, but details. Wizards of the Coast. Long may their game system burn, and hopefully we are going to see the rise of some good competition that isn't, Paizo or other wokeist alternatives. It might be a long shot, but could be closer than you think as well. And on that cryptic note, until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you very much for listening, and do let me know what you think about this as well, although I suspect I know the preponderance of the position in this particular regard. Have a good day.